Hello and welcome to my channel, I Win to Lose Gaming. The brand new Abyss 12 for patch 3.5 is here on the Asia servers, and what can I say besides, honestly, it's a bit of a doozy. Especially if you do not use or have any featured 5-star characters, this one is going to be a bit rough. Now, we're going to take a look at the two teams that I've set up for this Abyss 12 run, and because I've been in such a Xinyan mood lately, thanks to the DPS showdown that I just did, we're going to be rocking her, and she's going to be using the White Blind, and for artifacts, she's just using a combination of two-piece sets, because I want her to actually kind of focus on more balanced damage output with her Elemental Burst, as well as some of her basic attacks. And she's at Constellation 6, her talents are at 9, 12, and 12. And finally, up next, we have Bennett. Bennett is the usual Sapwood Blade, Noblesse Oblige Bennett with a lot of energy recharge, not much else to say about him. Hazo is here, and he is using the Widsith, along with the 4-piece Viridescent Veneer with an Anemo damage focused build. We can see that his crit ratios are pretty good. And next we have Xiangling, very usual, the catch build with the 4-piece Emblem of Severed Fates. And she's also at Constellation 6 with good talent levels. Now for the second half of Abyss 12, we have the typical kooky Hyperbloom team, and we have a Favonius Dendro Traveler with a lot of energy recharge and the 4-piece Deepwood Memories, and she is at Constellation 6 with whatever talents. Kooky Shinobu is mainly a Elemental Mastery build. She has the Tokabo Shigure along with the 4-piece Flower of Paradise Lost in order to maximize her Hyperbloom damage. And Sucrose is the usual Sacrificial Fragment Sucrose to share as much Elemental Mastery with her team as possible with the 4-piece Viridescent Veneer. And finally, we have Xingqiu, who just has the typical Sacrificial Sword build along with the 4-piece Emblem of Severed Fates. He is also at Constellation 6, and his ratios are not quite as good as the other characters, DPS characters that I had in the first team, but they're still all right. Alright, we're going to open this up with Bennett's Burst into Xiangling's Burst, and then we're going to use Hazo's Burst to group them up a little bit. But as we can see, we're getting wall up there, but that's okay. The whole point of running behind the female Aramite trainer is to actually help keep them a bit more grouped up than they otherwise would be. I'm going to keep him in Bennett's circle a bit. Really sorry about that, but I had a bit of stuff in my throat. So anyway, now we just do the usual stuff when it comes to breaking shields like this, which is just do a lot of pyro and stuff. So unfortunately, Bennett didn't get his burst buff before, so that way I didn't have a second E, but that's okay. So up next, this chamber is this is honestly one of the most annoying Abyss 12s in a very, very long time. I honestly despise it. But, it's okay, right? So as we can see, these guys just throw a whole bunch of garbage at you. And fortunately though, we are able to just kind of burst them all down with a quick typical Hyperbloom rotation, which will really help a lot when it comes to finishing these guys off pretty quickly. So now these Hydro Abyss Heralds are some of my least favorite enemies in the entire game. Like, they just keep doing their stupid dashes all across the map all the time, and not only is it not fun, but it is extremely dumb, right? Like, just look at that. You can't really do anything to them, because if you cast your circles in one spot, then they're just going to be across the entire... I don't even know why I used Xingqiu's Burst there, but it looks like I did. Anyway, either way, let's just try to finish them off real quick. Now, here we go. We're going to want to focus this one a little bit more than the other, because obviously he has a much lower gauge, and they also happen to lower your cooldowns too, which is absolutely outrageous in my opinion, as if these guys weren't annoying enough. But we can see here that we are making some progress, and so hopefully we can finish it off. And oh my god, why is Kookie's thing still on cooldown? I mean, I guess it doesn't really matter too much, but... Oh! We're out of there. Okay, I think every time you get hit, you get like more cooldown. So you're pretty much stuck without any elemental skills or any abilities, assuming you don't dodge like me. You know him, you love him. It's the Magukenki. We have dealt with this guy so many times over the years. And yeah, it really has been years since we've seen him in the Abyss 12 all the time, right? Like, miHoYo loves throwing in the Magukenki when they don't really know who else to put in here. We can see here that I am very good at dodging in this game. And, fortunately for us, the Magukenki did not blink back immediately, which does give us a lot of time to do additional damage to it. And hopefully we also don't need another elemental burst, and I like to run away from it a little bit there, because that way it actually won't warp away as consistently. And we managed to clear that in just a little over a minute, which is certainly not ideal, but it's not the worst thing that, you know, that can happen. Because the reason why it's not ideal is because this chamber here is an absolute nightmare. As you can see, all these guys, they're just like, they're just getting spread out constantly. And I really, really dislike these Husk guys too, because unless you have a 5-star Animo character, specifically, obviously like Traveler and Venti, you're really going to struggle with keeping these guys grouped up. And if we know anything about Genshin Impact, obviously the ability to keep enemies grouped up is extremely important, because it effectively, you know, obviously increases your damage by a ton. And now unfortunately, this guy's really annoying too. I don't exactly know what its shield actually does. So it is a bit of a problem, because it seems to appear like it does something and stops us from, you know, surely it must mitigate damage for their team somehow, right? But I'm just not entirely sure exactly how it accomplishes that. All I know is that it feels like it's doing that for the enemies. So either way though, we can see here that I guess we actually did manage to clear that in a very reasonable amount of time, all things considered. Okay, so 1221 has a single rune guard at the beginning, which you do typically have to actually burn through a full rotation in order to get rid of. And that's okay. Let's finish it off real quick with this team. And now we're going to have 2 of these Cryo Lava Trolls, who I'm actually going to battery Xiangling up a bit. We're going to use Bennett's Burst to iframe through this. And next we're going to use Xiangling's Guoba. And finally some Xinyan stuff. And we're going to use Heizo's Burst in order to iframe through all that craziness, because otherwise you will probably get one-shot by it, and it is really nasty. So just like that, you can see there that I allocated my burst appropriately in order to iframe through stuff properly. Okay, so for this one, I recommend probably putting DMC's burst right here, and then infusing it with Hydra like this. This way, you're actually able to get a couple additional hits off on it when it pops up right here. And you can get a couple more Hyper Blooms. Now, I probably should have actually moved it forward a bit more in comparison to where I actually placed it, but hey, that's okay. It's not that big of a deal. And there we go. So let's go ahead, and I'm just going to go ahead and go for it and go for a couple extra Hyper Blooms here, because we really do need as much damage as possible against this guy. And actually, yeah, putting it there worked out pretty well, because it did indeed allow us to hit it a little bit more with DMC's Elemental Burst. Before it ended up, you know, flying away and stuff. So, okay, I'm gonna try to, now we gotta snipe out of the sky with a swirl like this. And unfortunately I don't have DMC's burst immediately, but that's okay. So hopefully we can still get some good damage on this guy. And yeah, not enough Hyper Bloom activations, honestly, with all these, with too much Xingqiu activation, but that's okay, I guess. So we are on track there. You can see where I placed the DMC bursts in order to basically hit it twice with our stuff, right? Because we're gonna want it to be in his AoE, in the AoE twice. And unfortunately, this time, not as fortunate there when it came to DMC's burst positioning, but that's alright. Hopefully we will have enough time to actually finish it off. And it's gonna pop up here. We're just gonna go for a single Hyper Bloom. I don't really want to risk it. And now he's gonna do the whole thing where he flies up in the sky. And again, as always, you need to swirl it. Swirl him. Swirl him. Oh my gosh, okay. There we go, finally. And we can pop this stuff. And we're gonna need Xingqiu's burst again soon. So I'm gonna keep him on the field for a little bit. And yeah, there we go. Let's try to just poke it a little bit here and there. Awesome, it spawned right on DMC's burst, which hopefully we can get a couple more off. Oh my gosh, it's so close. So there we go. And oh man, by just by a hair, but you could see the placements of DMC's burst in order to actually connect it a couple times with it. And we can also see how this free-to-play approach really honestly struggled to 9-star Abyss 12, especially without any featured 5-star characters. It's pretty rough. So as usual with these types of Abyss 12 first impression videos, I will include a day 1 speedrun. Now, unfortunately, I'm not all that happy with this specific day 1 speedrun, but this was just an initial strategy that I came up with. First, we're just going to rely on Yelan's Constellation 6 in order to take out the first wave, and also use just her coordinated attacks to take out the Abyss Cryo Herald guy. And we're going to use Yoimiya's burst in order to help apply more pyro to break this guy's cryo shield. As we can see that it does go down fairly quickly, but I did take some unnecessary hits to slow things down. But oh well, all is good. We did manage to clear that. Now up next is the Magu Kenki, and I do have to kind of battery up my team a bit. And I use Yelan's burst specifically this time for a very specific reason. It is extremely intentional, and that is because we now still have Yelan's burst available for Yoimiya's portion in order to finish off the second half of the Magu Kenki. Now Magu Kenki can be beaten in about 18 seconds with a more proper team, but as we can see here, it took much longer than that. Anyway, 12-3-1, very similar strategy. Just use Yelan to wipe out the first wave, and then use Yoimiya to essentially wipe out the second wave. And as we can see, because the lava trails are split up on the sides like this, and because pyro is super heavily recommended, this is why I went with a Yoimiya Bennett Yelan team. So a little bit more information about the 12-3-2 boss, the giant animo worm thing. Well, it has about 1.94 million health, and it's also spending so much time just digging through the ground and doing absolutely nothing. Now what makes this thing especially terrible to fight is the fact that it actually has elevated resistances unless it's knocked down onto the ground. And I believe only the element that was swirled with one of its wind balls, for only that swirlable element does this giant worm thing seem to lose its resistance to. So this in effect makes it an extremely durable target that also happens to just waste your time all the time, which is what makes it particularly annoying and difficult. I hate this thing. I don't know why miHoYo always has to add one of these dumb worm things to our Abyss 12. So let's talk a little bit more about some additional teams that you can use. Obviously, at least one pyro character, preferably a Bennett team, is going to be extremely good for the top half of Abyss 12, because Bennett is just so good against cryo shields like the Abyss Herald, as well as the Frost Arm Lava Trolls, and of course he's also a healer. Magu Kenki is a big whatever, you know, he just kind of wastes a bit of time with all its invincibility frames, but fortunately it's not nearly as annoying as that stupid snake guy. So yeah, really any type of pyro team that utilizes Bennett is going to do exceptionally well in the top half of Abyss 12. Now as for the second half, I actually think that Freeze is probably your best bet. Freeze plus Kazuha is actually going to do a lot of work, and then you can freeze them in place, lock them down, and then just kill them like that. Now for 12-2 as well, Freeze is going to do pretty well against these guys, because once Kazuha brings them in, you can actually freeze them and just annihilate all of them all at once with Kazuha and stuff. And I'm not sure if the bulky shield one is able to be grouped by Kazuha, but at the very least you can bring the other two close to the shield one with a crowd controller like Kazuha and then freeze them. For the second half, I do recommend avoiding a shield as these things get really nasty once they hit you when you have a shield. So in other words, you definitely want to avoid Zhongli, you want to avoid Geo, you want to avoid characters that give you shields like Diona, Beidou, etc, etc. Do post down below what you cleared this Abyss 12 with, and that can absolutely help give some others some inspiration for clearing their Abyss 12s. As always, I appreciate every single one of you. This is I Went to Lose, signing out.